I'd like to introduce our first speaker for tonight. Dr. Jaspal Singh is a board member of the Sikh House of Worship, Gurdwara, Khalsa, Darbar, and forgive me for my pronunciation. He is a physician at Carolinas Medical Center and chair of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for adult medical specialties. Please welcome Dr. Singh.
Thank you so much for the organizers of tonight. Thanks for having me. I'm Jaspal. I'm a member of the Sikh Gurdwara. I think you've heard already. Thanks for the kind introduction. But really, I don't want to be up here speaking. I want to hear more of that song, that prayer. That was pretty special. So thank you for that. In confession, I don't really know what to tell you about healing and prayer, to be honest with you. It's just a hard topic to encapsulate in the 10 minutes, whatever we were given. But I'll just sort of share some thoughts about the Sikh view of life. Sikh, S-I-K-H, I'm a physician, not S-I-C-K, and I get that confused a lot. But the proper pronunciation is Sikh, the Sikh way of life. It emanated from the 1400s in an era which I don't think is very different than today. A lot of people had a lot of sort of very staunch ideas of what prayer meant, where God was, what was the right and wrong ways of doing things. And it was a very confusing time, and sounds like today, right? A very confusing time. There are a lot of distractions. I mean, I know they didn't have cell phones and devices, but there's a lot of distractions in the day. And so many spiritual people back in that time took a different approach, similar to what Western monks might do. They might go to an independent area and become an ascetic, become on their own, and sort of really do an inward search. And that was important. It's important for discovery. It's important for healing. It's important for prayer so that you can focus, devoid of distraction. And so one of our first, we call our teacher a guru. A guru is a spiritual guide, and guru actually means turns darkness to light. The darkness being not just what's around us, but what's within us. And trying to think through what that looks like, the guru is someone who's supposed to guide you, like a mentor, a parent, but at a different dimensional level. And so you can pick the wrong guru, which could be YouTube. There's plenty of gurus out there, right? And you can decide which one you want with a click. But your fate is guided by that guru, including when you're in happiness and when you're in sadness or when you're hurting in some ways and you need that bit of healing to happen. You also might need a little bit of help with prayer. And prayer may seem like a very personal thing, like everyone says, I pray or I do things. And sometimes I think the intention, the technique, you can argue about the techniques, but it's about trying to figure out how does your soul get uplifted and then stay uplifted? Because it's not easy, right? And so the guru is meant to help you with that. And so our initial guru, Guru Nanak, sort of grew up in this environment and trying to make sense of it all. And I'm not in his mind, but I just sort of watched the actions of what he did, and he sort of said, you know what, we've I think muddled religion a little bit. It comes down to the Sikh philosophy is basically, make it simple. You do three things. One is called Nam Japo. You all can say it, Nam Japo. And next is Vand Chako. And the third is Kirit Karo. So Nam Japo is simply just remember that, whatever you want to call it, God, that creator, the force, whatever you want to use for that term, but then recognize that it's not just in, I don't mean to offend anybody, but it's not in heaven. It's actually everywhere on this earth, and it's actually within you. And in the Indian tradition, where this all started, there was a lot of, what we call there's actually a structural called the caste system. And we might have heard about diversity earlier. What if diversity was used against, and is still used against many people, to keep people down, right? The idea of, us and them, and the idea of social strata and even spiritual strata exist today. But the Sikh religion's like, you know what, we're all part of the same creator. Just focus, be aware, use prayer, use your spirit, use your teachings, and then bring it in. And then really focus. So that was the first part. And that many ascetics, many religions, many places did that. And many ascetics would do that elsewhere. They needed to focus outside of distraction. And that's fine in order to achieve that goal. But then Guru Nanak said, well, that's not enough. You got to do Vandchako. Oh, actually, I mixed up the order. Kirat Karo. Kirat Karo is an honest living. And the idea is you don't just focus, you don't just pray by thinking, you pray by doing. Your actions are your prayer. If you do it in a dishonest way, if you serve humanity dishonestly, if you try to cheat or take advantage of people, those who are downtrodden, those who are weak, those who are less advantaged than you, that's actually a distraction from your soul. And so that itself is a form of prayer. Actions are a form of prayer. And then the third piece is Vandchako. Vandchako is the idea that it's not enough to be self-centered. Yes, we all want comforts of life. Yes, we all have some necessities. And he's saying, don't be shy of having those necessities. But then prayer is making the world better. It may not be on a grand scale. It may be on a very small scale. Maybe your children, maybe the next neighbor's children, maybe somebody else's life you make more beautiful. That is also prayer. So the idea of Vandchako or service or seva are so ingrained in the Sikh religion because it's all tied into how we worship. We don't just worship internally. Do we have a lot of prayers? Oh yes, we have a book that's super big, right? And I even made it through all of it, and but it's one of those things where, and I'm not a scholar, so I apologize if I offended anybody, but that's sort of how I'm thinking about framing tonight, is the idea of prayer in that regard. The other part is, I would say, the Sikh faith and the Sikh tradition is that you don't have to do it alone. Being alone is hard, right? You have a guru, but if your guru's not around, or you don't feel connected to somebody, look around and use two things. One is your senses. We just heard beautiful music. Use song. So those from the Unity Church, you've been on our Sundays, you've seen the kids learning the traditions of song. We use traditional rags that are basically like different scales that are musically sort of passed down through generations of musical scholarly tradition. But the idea that this ties in biologically to how you absorb the message. And so the different rags, the different tunes that the kids play, or the music that the prayer is done through, is actually tied to times of day, seasons of the year, so that it can really maximize your senses to achieve the more ultimate experience. Use that. Use light. Use the things that are around you. Use your eyes, your vision, use your touch. Use various things that really help you bring in that nam japo, that idea of bringing one. And when you're in prayer, I guess people today call it mindfulness, right? Focus. That focus, you mentioned present, or somebody mentioned being present. And I think that awareness and focus that's so lacking today, because I'll blame my devices, right? It's hard to achieve it, but you don't do it alone. The other persons the Sikhs believe in a community. We're strong believers. We call that word sangat. Sangat, you can pray in person, and we all try in person, but I'll be honest with you, I'm the worst at meditation. I'm not like in LA, like you meditate and you tweet about it and you talk about it. And we have a lot of people that do that in society, right? It's a sexy thing to do. It's a trendy thing to do, to like pray and then meditate and compare how you do different techniques. But in reality, doing it with others has a deeper meaning. It's so much just like I have fitness classes with others. I do better. I do better praying with all of you than I would do alone. And so the Sikh tradition is very much important to that. Sikh tradition is also important that when things happen, we talked about healing as a theme tonight. We all suffer tragedies. We all still will suffer tragedies. I think I was mentioning to Lisa, I was just in Ukraine working on something, and I read about, and I saw a lot of suffering, I thought, in the Ukraine from the effects of the war. But then I visited Auschwitz, which was near Krakow, and I read about it. I read about the Holocaust. I watched the movies, watched Schindler's List, felt pretty woke, as they say, right? And then and then I was just sat there, and the healing that community has to go through to process something, an experience like that, I can't imagine. And they shouldn't go through it alone. They should go through it with all of us. So this International Day of Prayer can hopefully acknowledge the amount of hurt, the amount of devastation. That's just one community. There's so many others today that are going through genocides and hurting and all kinds of suffering. But let's pray together. Let's heal together. And our Sikh tradition is to also contribute. You can't just be an ascetic, because that is a selfish way of thinking. Prayer happens in action. Prayer happens with others, for others, not for ourselves. But by doing it for others, we help ourselves. So thank you for having me up here. I'll be around for questions. Thanks.